stand up, I use the mic. You use the mic.
You can sit and ask.
Thank you. So, thank you, sir. That was an insightful lecture. Sir, my question relates to the very possibility of creating an Indianized political theory. Because our society is so deeply embedded in religion, it is so deeply infused. And as we read Machiavelli, Marx, Gramsci, and a lot of other thinkers, we constantly see that religion makes us morally weak and it decreases our political consciousness. This has been evident in many Indian philosophies as well. As at time of analyzing why India was subject to so much invasions, I read in Acharya Rajish's book, Krishna the Man and His Philosophy. He argued that most of the Indian religions, except the Krishna's path, were pessimistic. They declined the political consciousness, and people were submissive and more readily accepting everything, what is going around. And many times when a person faces injustice, he is told by the religion that it was much due to your own bad deeds in the past times, or maybe you'll get happiness in the next possible life. So it does not teach us to revolution. My question is, how do we make Indian citizenry so much more politically active, conscious of their rights, demanding, protesting? How do we make them active? And can an Indian political theory truly emerge from within the traditions that often sanctify patience over protest? That's all my question.
Use the mic.
Sir, thank you very much for delivering such an enlightening session. But I think, sir, whole debate and the discussion regarding Indian political theory which we had now can be condensed to only two things, sir. And it's not about the Indian political theory which we are discussing now. It's a whole lot of things which can be condensed only to two things. The whole subaltern theory, the whole decolonization debate, everything comes here. And the two things which I am trying to say is the universality debate and the debate of language, sir. So the discussion was about Indian political theory. So the first part is Indian and the second part is political theory. And here political theory, in political theory you discussed, sir, we are doing intellectual atyachar, it is about jargoning and frightening everyone. These were the concerns. And in the Indianizing aspect, we were thinking on, the first thing is the medium of thinking. हम सोच किस में रहे हैं, ये होगा. तो सर यहाँ पर फिर से हम घूम फिर के उसी डिबेट में आगे फंस जाएंगे कि इंडिया में हम फिर सोचेंगे किससे, कौन ऐसा वो कॉमन लैंग्वेज होगा. आप कहते थे सर कि एक इंसान को एक एक्स्ट्रा लैंग्वेज एटलीस्ट सीख लेना चाहिए. तो फिर वो अगर हम एक लैंग्वेज नहीं ढूंढ पाएंगे कि वो कॉमन लैंग्वेज क्या होगा, फिर वो इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थ्योरी का सर डिबेट वापस चालू हो जाएगा और वो लैंग्वेज का डिबेट पूरा स्टार्ट हो जाएगा. और इंडियनाइजिंग में लैंग्वेज के अलावा आता है सर कि वो कॉन्टेक्स्ट क्या है, व्हाट इज दैट कॉन्टेक्स्ट. तो क्राइसिस, सर आप बोल रहे थे कि क्राइसिस पे सर्वाइव होगा, क्राइसिस पे पॉलिटिकल थ्योरी आती है. और सच में अभी जो मेजर इवेंट्स हैपेंस एट द टाइम ऑफ क्राइसिस, वी ऑल एग्री ऑन दैट. तो व्हाट डू यू थिंक सर, वो क्राइसिस क्या है अभी जो इंटरनेशनल क्राइसिस इज ऑफ पॉपुलिज्म इन यूएसए और बहुत जगह है, क्या आप वो भी इंडिया में फील कर रहे हैं? और बाकी जो क्राइसिस आपने बताई सर, इंस्टीट्यूशनल डिके, ये सारी बातें हमने देखी. आपको क्या लगता है सर, वो क्राइसिस को हम, क्या ये क्राइसिस इतना बड़ा है कि वो पूरा चेंज आ पाएगा अभी वो? और सर अगर हम, सर मैं जो आपकी बातें सुन रहा था उसमें एक अटेम्प्ट, आप बहुत ही क्लोज जा रहे थे, ऐसा काम डेविड ईस्टन ने भी किया सर, जब वो कर रहे थे कि डेविड ईस्टन जब कर रहे थे तो उन्होंने भी सर पॉलिटिक्स के लैंग्वेज को बहुत आसान करने की कोशिश की. मतलब भले ही वो साइंटिफिक अप्रोच में चला गया लेकिन बहुत आसान करने की कोशिश की कि पॉलिटिक्स इज नथिंग बट ऑथोरिटेटिव एलोकेशन ऑफ वैल्यूज. क्योंकि पॉलिटिक्स में ये उसने ये कहा, उसने ये कहा, दीज वर द थिंग्स यू वर डिलीवरिंग सर, कि हम नाम नहीं लेना है हमें कि हेवनलेस ये बोल रहा है, वो ये बोल रहा है. पॉलिटिक्स इज बस कि जनरली लोग क्या बात कर रहे हैं पॉलिटिक्स के बारे में, ये पॉलिसी चाहिए तो इसके लिए हमारे डिमांड है और ये ऐसे आएगा इस पे. तो वो जो पूरा इनपुट आउटपुट मॉडल देता है, तो पॉलिटिक्स इज अबाउट एलोकेशन ऑफ वैल्यूज थ्रू दैट इनपुट आउटपुट मॉडल. तो उसने भी जनरलाइज करने की कोशिश की थी सर, पर हुआ क्या, वो थ्योरी यूज ही नहीं हो पाया सर. आज भी हम जो पॉलिटिकल थ्योरी है उसको एक स्टैंडर्ड थ्योरी के बिना यूज नहीं कर सकते सर. सो आई वांट टू आर्ग्यू हियर कि थ्योरी का भी सर आप यूनिवर्सलाइजिंग जो नोशंस है आपको लेके चलना चाहिए. और बहुत ज्यादा अगर हम उसको कंटेक्चुअलाइज कर देते हैं तो थोड़ी दिक्कत ही होगी। मतलब कितना भी हम पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम उनका पढ़ लिया फिर एनालाइज कर दे, लेकिन स्टेट का कंसेप्ट हो गया या फिर कुछ भी ऐसे कंसेप्ट हो गए, थोड़ा लेके चलना ही पड़ेगा। और इंडियनाइजिंग सर हम कैसे करेंगे? कॉन्टेक्स्ट एंड लैंग्वेज सर, दीज वर द टू क्वेश्चंस ऑफ माइन, इफ यू कैन।
थर्ड क्वेश्चन.
तो एक एक क्वेश्चन में 5-5 क्वेश्चन है.
One more thing, I would like to request everyone to keep the question very crisp, not to explain the whole. You can
more
use.
than one question each here.
ये ठीक है, चल रहा है.
So I wanted to ask you, like, do we need, like, is the current political system good at understanding the needs and wants of the polity? And do you think the wants and needs of the polity is a republic? Like, in like the other language, it's like Jantantra. Is that does the masses, which is the Jan, want the Ganatantra? Like, is that something that we want? And is it like an effective thing of understanding the needs of the polity that we're talking about? So that's pretty much it.
One more question. Can
Sir, would you like to answer or should I?
हाँ, अभी कर दो, काफ़ी हैं ऑलरेडी.
Okay, sir.
एक एक करके, I mean no hurry, I'll answer every question. The idea that we cannot have an Indian political theory because we have dominance of religion, which decreases our political consciousness, because religion and tradition teach us to patience rather than protest, and that is why we do not have revolution, is itself a statement of political theory. You have already made a theoretical statement about Indian politics. I personally do not agree with it at all, but you have yourself proven already that political theory is possible, because this is a theory of Indian politics, that in India revolution does not take place because people are steeped in traditions, because religions are so retrograde and backward looking and religions teach you not to rebel. This is the theory of Indian politics.
The values that will be.
So because I was only saying, at the moment I'll not get into the thing of whether I agree with this proposition or not. I will simply state that I radically disagree with everything in this statement. I think this way of understanding of India is precisely, to my mind, the reason why we have ended up in this political incapacity. So much of the political helplessness and incapacity of the Indian left and the Indian liberals is self-inflicted, because they have created a theory around themselves which has made them even more helpless than they are. And to my mind, this statement is an example of that. But at the moment, I'm just limiting myself to your argument that is why there is no possibility of Indian political theory. Political theory, in order to be good and powerful, need not be about something good that's happening. Gramsci's theory of hegemony is not about something very nice. It's about something terrible. Gramsci basically tells you that ruling class rules because actually poor people, people who are oppressed, actually share the cultural values with that ruling class. So you're making a similar statement. So if we can have a theory of fascism, if we can have a theory of why people do not rebel, so to my mind, this statement does not prove. In fact, it only goes on to confirm why we need theory, and to my mind also confirm why we need carefully thought through theory. If we do not have articulated theories, then we have unconscious theories, of which what you said is an example. And therefore I would like us to theorize so that अगली बार
Can I restructure?
Huh?
Because the theories that emerge in Europe are only after the Renaissance. When the society itself reformed and it changed its own existing values. So do you think that in order to get a very good, I'm talking about the content, what the content of that theory will be. Yes, it's completely possible. But we need much more better values in that political theory that is subject, that is we developed.
Once again, the idea that in human civilization, a lot of good things happen only after European Renaissance, is, I think, a very parochial idea. I'm surprised that we actually think so. And I'm not surprised that you think so. Because, unfortunately, this is what our modern education has taught us. And this is truly the curse of colonialism. While it is quite common and fashionable and accepted in all our circles to talk about political colonialism, to talk about economic impact of colonialism, I think we are seriously inattentive to the cognitive and epistemic impact of colonialism. And one of the epistemic impact of colonialism is to teach us that everything nice in this world began after European Renaissance. That I'm unwilling to accept it. I think it's historically incorrect to say so, to think so. And that, to my mind, is part of the disease that I'm trying to argue against. The point about, there were many questions in what you said, 5 or 6 questions in one. One is, which language do we choose? The answer is wherever you happen to be. If you are working in Telangana, you would do Telugu. If you are in one part of Karnataka, you would choose Tulu. In another part, you would choose Kannada. Whatever your so in order to understand political practice, I have to draw upon. Sorry.
Sir, from Karnataka being Kannada and everything, the local language, वो यूरोप के किसी भी स्टेट से बहुत बड़ा है, तो क्यों उसको कर्नाटका पॉलिटिकल थ्योरी हो जाएगा सर?
So I'm so happy we are talking about these things. You see, we never say Gramsci is an Italian political theory. We never say Machiavelli is not a European political thinker. But something done in Kannada is not an Indian political theory. Why? Just think about it. The idea that we can think of languages like Kannada as local. How many speakers does Kannada have? How many speakers does Italy have? Just think about it. I think it's quite possible that our minds, and this is what the impact of intellectual colonialism has been. We have, the word, we say these are vernaculars, these are local languages. So the very idea, so I think we have all been trained, and this I feel, and in this respect, the liberals and the leftists are not different from each other at all, because they're you can be politically revolutionary and you can be intellectually very obedient. And what has struck me is about the obedience of certain part of Indian left and Indian liberals when it comes to European modernity. That we are so willing to accept the autobiography of Europe. It's not just the life of Europe. Europe wants to tell us a story about itself. And we so obediently accept that story. Why? Gramsci probably did not know German. To my mind, he did not. Sitting in prison, he had limited facilities. His reflections on what happened there could enlighten, had that that had power, which can enable you and I to understand parts of Indian politics today. Please remember that great book on democratic theory, which is called Preface to Democratic Theory, written by Robert Dahl. Do you remember what is that book about? That book is about a small town of America called New Havens, which is where University of Yale happens to be situated. They can create a global theory of that tiny town. मतलब मेरे रेवाड़ी से भी छोटा है वो. And you and I think that Kannada is too small for us to give a theory. There's something to be thought about these things. You compared it to David Easton. I could not understand because unlike you, I come from that generation where David Easton was actually studied very seriously. You people may have now forgotten all that stuff. हमें पढ़ाते थे ना उस ज़माने में. But I could not understand that parallel at all because.
You were saying that where we want to go as a country.
So everyone who does any kind of political theory tries to talk about these basics of this. I have neither in methodological terms nor in political terms ever been able to relate to anything David Easton has ever said. So I fail to connect to that. Your question is the present crisis big enough? What else are you waiting for? The country is the republic that was built on the foundations of the sacrifice of generations of people. That republic is being dismantled in front of our eyes. Which bigger crisis are we waiting for? Crisis brought by Mr. Trump in the US? I notice it, but if I'm more troubled by what Mr. Trump is doing in the US and less by what Mr. Modi is doing in India, there's something basically wrong with us. So just like emergency was a moment for those who thought about Indian politics to reflect. What we forget is that Rajni Kothari's famous book came before emergency. And after emergency, Rajni Kothari never released another edition of that book, which is a masterpiece of his.
He disowned actually.
He disowned that book. Politics in India, still the masterpiece of Indian politics. He disowned his book after emergency. Everyone said another edition. He simply said no, किताब का कोई edition नहीं छपेगा. This is what crises do to you. This is what led Kothari to alternatives and new kind of thinking and so on. So if emergency could lead to this kind of thinking, I really think, because what is being questioned today are all the foundational values of modern India. Secularism, socialism, a certain kind of nationalism, federalism, every single value is under assault right now. So I cannot think of a bigger crisis. Is the current system good at understanding the needs? No, it's not. Clearly it is not. There is a disjunction. I do not fully know what do we mean by current system. Is the constitutional design of the Republic of India, the design that was created in 1950, is that a perfect design? No, it is not. Is that design worth saving? Yes, it is worth saving and struggling for. Imperfect as it is, that design provided spaces for me to be able to alter it, for me to be able to work through it. It provided spaces for me to be able to put my words in a given template. Today, that capacity is being challenged. So I would still wish to defend it while I've been a critic of that system all my life. But when fundamentals are being taken away, when the very idea that the very freedom of speech, frankly, I wasn't sure whether I would be allowed to speak. And when they finally got the permission for me to speak, I said, wow, I'm very impressed, because in 5 Indian universities, my lectures have been cancelled after being announced. This is the speech of freedom of speech in this country today. So in that situation, I would wish to defend the constitutional design of our republic while struggling to put better content in it. I don't know whether I understood that question clearly.
I think you answered the need, right? I want you also to answer the want of the polity. Does the polity want what you want? And does the system also understand the want, not just the need of the polity, but does it also understand the wants of the polity, the political system? And is the republic one of those wants of the polity? So you addressed the need and your wishes, but the wants and wants of the polity side is what I also want to do.
People need it.
I don't fully understand, because the system is a word you and I have created. There is no there is no system that thinks. System is an abstraction you and I have created. So the system obviously does not think. The system obviously does not desire or do things. System is a name for many things that we put together.
No, the
So
system is the tool. I want, the polity is what thinks and wants, right? So the people want something.
people,
And the,
you mean to say people?
yes.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I was confused about polity and system. Do the people want it? Well, when I say that we have lost a cultural and intellectual battle, what I mean to say is that we have lost the capacity to relate to people. And there is no doubt that what was nationalism 30, 40 years ago is seen very differently today. What was secularism is seen in a very poor light today. So yes, I certainly agree with you that the people have moved substantially away, which is to say public opinion has substantially moved away from what you and I believe, or at least I believe. A certain kind of, the constitutional values of this country and public opinion have definitely drifted apart and have been forced to drift apart and are drifting apart every single day. There can be two responses. One would be to say, to hell with public, they're wrong, they should learn. This is what I suspect to be the unspoken response of many progressive persons. I happen to have a different response, which is to say, you cannot elect a new people. You work with people. That's why you go and understand their language. So someone who says all kinds of insensitive and obnoxious things about Muslims may otherwise be a very decent person. Is there a way that I can speak to his decency and speak to him about what he says about Muslims? These are the kind of conversations we need to have. And my fear is that progressive, liberal, radical, left-wing intellectuals and many political activists have given up this battle altogether because they do not want to get into that language. Because many of us believe, like our friend believes, that religion teaches only submissiveness, passiveness, etc. Because we are so afraid of getting into the language of religion. I really think the most radical thing that we can do is to understand people in their own language. And by language, I don't mean simply Hindi, Tamil, Telugu. In a metaphor, if their language is the language of Bhagwan, I should get into that, and understand it. This has been our biggest failure.
So, my question is precise. As you talk about the language, I think the universal language is something that is common. And my precise question is about somewhere on caste, which is the universal voice for India as well. In theory, in Indian political theory, we are talking about the hegemons and all. And while studying about hegemons, we are advocating like hegemon power. We are talking about the Vishwaguru. And despite the GDP growth, drastic GDP growth, despite of being in the poverty and two populations in India, and I belong to Bihar, I delved into the casteism very depth, that how casteism is in the local level, but somehow we forget to deal in the universal level. Like in India, we forget about the casteism. We deal it like we deal the Western things in India. So in Indian political theory, we don't talk about casteism, which is the major problem. I think Gandhiji after partition in Prarthana Sabha had said that undoubted that his non-violence, about the non-violence, that somehow he failed because of his passive resistance and difference between the passive resistance and non-violence. He doubted about his means. I am saying because the problem at that time was caste untouchability, and in contemporary time the problem is the same. But in the meantime, after independence, we talked about Western theories and concepts, but never talked about the casteism, the problem that delved deep into the local level and the universal as well.
I would like to request again, please be precise, don't explain.
Can I?
So with these lectures, we aspire to give direction to Indian political thought and for the people and for everyone. But so eventually when we see on ground, all the values are dismantled by everybody who's in power. Then how do we still remain hopeful that by devising a theory which is the best, but how do we stay optimistic that things will happen for the people?
And another question which is here. I am Sinan from Kerala. My question is purely epistemological. I appreciate that you advocate for a complete epistemic disobedience like African intellectuals have been doing inside their academia. And another version of decolonization or something we can call deconstruction. And I appreciate that, but are you saying that if we can reformulate new theories, new political theories, is that possible under a very networked academic structure where we already have been drawing from literature? We are not actually making theories. We are drawing from Gramsci, we are drawing from Marx, and we only make analysis out of it. And how this epistemic disobedience can be made for possible inside Indian academia, if we can clearly speak about it.
Does it work?
Yes.
So, sir, thank you so much for, I don't have enough words to say, but a very thought-provoking lecture which encourages us to critically look at it. I really liked your simile about halwai, and I was really thinking that you have always been a halwai who have done a great job in political theory, and yet you say that I am not a halwai, which is, I think, not fair, because I remember we teaching some of your writings which have contributed to this understanding, and unfortunately I continue to be that halwai. I am very much in this dukan, so I have to speak from that vantage point. There are a couple of points I would like to make. I think the very prefix saying Indian political theory is self-defeating in its content. Now, why do I say that? Because the moment we say political theory, I think the attempt is actually to take it out from whatever the contextual content it carries. The moment we add Indian to it, I think we deviate from that objective. And this very point, in fact, in your entire lecture, I'm so glad that your description was actually talking about that. And one of the points which you rightly mentioned, the decline of political theory in India after 1960s, I think one of the reasons is, and CTS syllabi is also a very good example. If you look at 1960s syllabi, it is full of courses on comparative politics. But what was being taught and what we later on started teaching in most of the political science departments is everything but comparative politics. Because we became, I would say, too much Indianized. We had always this burden of, looking very Indianized, which in fact we ended up not doing that as well. But the generation that you were referring, they were talking about India without actually being Indianized in that territorial sense, nation-state sense. And I remember that Discovery of India's famous statement which Nehru says in Discovery of India, कि जिस भारत माता की हम बात कर रहे हैं वो कौन है? And he problematizes that. So I think And this danger of nation state being in the center stage, which you or actually you warned about in your entire lecture, I think even if we say it, मिठाई खा के तो मीठा लगेगा ही भले कितना ही उसके बारे में वार्निंग क्यों न दे. और उसके बारे में सबसे बड़ा truth about Europe which you were talking is that Europe never acknowledged what it had learned from Persia and Arab countries. And it started telling everything that the knowledge which they were giving was actually localized knowledge, which actually it wasn't. And they ended up at a situation where, the whole culture of acknowledgement, acknowledging that we have learned from others, gradually went away because of the rise of the nation state. And that's the vantage point where we are talking about India today, whether we accept it or we do not. So I think that danger is very much there, which you have actually rightly highlighted. But with that prefix, I think it takes away that content. And just one final point. I'm sorry, Siddiq, you said that I should be concise. That we have been listening to different PhD proposals by students, and most of the students who come from different universities, they come up with local proposals. So you will be amazed, surprised, or maybe not. 99% proposals are about eulogizing the local contextual issues. They do not problematize. Because I think the way we have been teaching political science is fundamentally problematic in that sense. So that danger is very much real and around. And the moment you say Indian, you add that prefix Indian, I think that danger is becoming more intense. That's my humble submission. And I must say, you have been very humble in all your arguments, because you have contributed to this entire field genuinely and in different ways. But yet you said that you are not a political theorist. I think you are very much a political theorist. Whether we agree with those arguments or not, that's a different case. So thank you so much for all of this, and I'm sorry for taking long this.
Thank you. On the question of whether Indian political theory has ignored caste, I do not entirely agree with you. If you said this about 1980s, I would have agreed with you. When I was a student at CPS in 1981, we had a course on modern Indian political thought. In that course, the documents of Communist Party of India were taught, Shripad Amrit Dange was taught, Ambedkar was not. Ambedkar did not figure on the syllabi. That is a scandal. Talking about caste was a taboo. But that's 1980s. I think my impression, I'm not a practitioner of political theory, so I don't get to read whatever is being done on of someone who's involved and who's there. But my impression is that actually a lot of attention has been paid to the question of caste in the last 10, 15, 20 years. In fact, I sometimes feel that the attention paid to the question of caste suffers from two problems. Number one, in the 1980s, there was so much of class that you had to struggle to say, "Bhaiya, caste bhi hai, dekh lo jara usko." And today, sometimes it's exactly the opposite. You have to really convince. I mean, I actually have one of my naughty proposals is to write an article, a plea to my Marxist friends to take class more seriously. So I really think the Indian left needs to be convinced that class is a serious phenomenon. Today, this pendulum has swung exactly the other way around. That's what I feel. And the other problem is that very often we have started looking at the caste question through the prism of race, because race theories are so dominant that once again they are beginning to tell us how to look at caste. That's my impression, but as I said, I'm not that sort of there. The two questions about whether political theory is possible, because you said on ground everything is being dismantled. It is absolutely true. I completely agree with you that the situation is quite dreadful. But political theory need not be about nice things. The best of political theory is actually produced at times when the situation out there is terrible. Because political theory need not tell you the world is so good. The political theory is there to tell you why the world is in the sorry state that it is, among the many things that political theory can do. So whether it's good or bad, that doesn't matter. Whether the situation is hopeful or hopeless doesn't matter. The job of political theory is to make sense of why you are where you are. So in that sense, some of the worst times have produced some of the best theories. So it's a great opportunity in what is the current word for that? There is an opportunity in crisis. Na? There is Apda mein avsar. So there is Apda mein avsar available to all of you. On a similar question of whether it is possible to reformulate political theory, given the academic networks in which it works and given the structure of academic thinking that takes place. Yes, all these things are responsible for making political theory what it is, and not just political theory. To be fair, this is what has influenced much of our academia, not just in political science, sociology. Everything has been very deeply influenced. The two Indian disciplines which saved it were history and social anthropology. And the reason why they were saved, I keep thinking about it, why is it that social anthropology and history in India have done better than political science? While this country is deeply political, if someone had done a Rawlsian experiment and a thought experiment and asked you, if you knew everything about India, the only thing you did not know was about the state of disciplines in social science, what would you imagine? Then someone would say, okay, tell me which discipline will flourish in India and which discipline will not. My guess is you would have said political science will flourish in India because every street corner, pawn shop, everywhere, politics is what you discuss all the time. And my impression would have been history will never take off in this country because we are not historically minded people. We go to Taj Mahal and say, I love you. वो सब कर देते हैं, so we have no this thing for any of these historical things. But in reality, it's actually the other way around. History as a discipline flourished. Political science, to my mind, did not. What is the reason? I can think of just one reason, which is that in history, they made it mandatory for you to visit archives. You could not become a historian by giving your reflections about Indian past. You had to go and sit in the archive of 17th century and understand and learn your Persian or learn your Pali or what. There was a certain rigor was imparted and all your reflections were tied down to that work. In social anthropology, they force you to go to a village. गांव में जाओ 2 साल रहो फिर वापस आओ. In disciplines like political science, and I suspect that's also true of sociology, there were no such constraints. If you spoke good English, that's all you needed to do. You could go a long, long way just with English. And this is very unfair comment, very unkind, probably not unfair, but very unkind. But that's what I feel, that this is what happened. So, yes, I understand why it is what it is. Can it be broken? Yes, the beauty about intellectual things is this. Can democracy of India be restored? That's a big job. This is about moving millions, crores of people. Can the shape of political theory be changed? It just takes 5 people. Honestly. How many scholars were involved in Subaltern Studies project? Initially 7 or 8. They changed the way history as a discipline was studied in India and then abroad. It just takes 5 or 10 good minds, committed in conversation with each other, respecting each other's work, but expressing disagreements. 10 people of your generation can change the state of political theory in this country, no matter what larger structures there are. So, because this is beauty of small numbers, that's why I'm hopeful. Thanks for those very kind words. I personally think in my own work on elections and survey research, I missed an opportunity. I had an opportunity, I had a platform I seriously underutilized it. If I were to reflect on my own work, I would not have such kind assessment that you have. So I'm doubly grateful that your assessment is kinder than my own. But I think the move towards so in a sense I was making a similar move as I said about archives or about social anthropology. In understanding of politics, you should be tied to something. Someone should go say to you, go and learn Pali, read these 10 granth and then come back to me. Usse pehle baat mat karo. Or go and spend 1 year in Araria. Go to village to village to village till you can almost pass off as a local. Don't come back to me. If we did that, political science would flourish as a discipline. This is so I was trying to do, which is, survey research is something similar. Go and look at tables, go and do regressions, which is, in other words, just don't do thoughting. Me and my thoughts about the universe. That's not political science. Go and relate to external reality. Do that. So I was trying to do that. I'm happy that I did that. I'm sad that I did not make better use of that opportunity. On the specific things of, in one sense I agree and in another sense I disagree with you. I agree that Indian suffix is unnecessary. Ideally, I would see a universe in which I go to Brazil and I speak to someone, what do you do? And she will say, I do political theory. And its meaning would be that she studies Brazil, that she makes sense of Brazilian society. And I would say, I'm political theorist, and both of us would understand that when I say I'm a political theorist and when she says, I know that she knows Portuguese, I know she's involved in some area, she makes sense, and I'm maybe coming from Haryana, from Bhojpur or wherever, and we speak. So I do look at that world in which this suffix will become unnecessary. But given the world that we live in, where the word political theory always carries that unwritten suffix, Western, what passes for political theory is nothing but Western political theory. In that world, for a few decades, allow me that suffix. After that, I'll drop it. Or they will drop it. But they will probably drop that suffix by then. That there is too much of, the second thing is probably a little misunderstanding, which is nation state. When I say India, do I mean Indian nation state? No, I don't. In fact, that's why I said there are 4 layers. When I say Indian experience, there are 4 layers of that experience. One which is universal, the other is something that I shared with 10 other countries. Third is which is of Indian nation state or maybe of Indian subcontinent. And fourth is that of a sub-national unit. All 4 operate all the time. And when I am looking at one reality, I'm sitting in Meerut and trying to understand one reality, it will have component of all these 4. So I certainly do not want, when I say Indian, it is not limited to Indian nation state. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to clarify. Because trying to restrict political theory to the formal boundaries of nation state would be catastrophic. Finally, your point about too much of contextualism, too much of localism. I think we may have a disagreement on that. I understand what you mean. When we get research proposals, or when I used to be in the university system and look at research proposals, too much of contextualism and localism in a very shallow sense, which is to say, here is a given theory, let me apply it to my own district. The interesting thing about most Indian research proposals in the universities is that there is no research question at all. There is a 400-page thesis and there is no question behind that. Because we are not taught to ask questions. But I'm speaking only of those who have a question. I'm speaking of political theory right now. In political theory, my impression, I could be wrong, and that's why I repeatedly say I'm not a political theorist. I'm not a practicing political theorist. I'm a consumer. You could occasionally say I'm a well-informed consumer, but that's all. So I'm not a practitioner. But my impression is that when it comes to political theory, we do not suffer from too much of localism. We suffer from exactly the other disease, where even if there is reference to local, it is a very shallow reference to local. Underlying that reference to local is a theoretical grid, which is very much universal. And by universal, I mean very much provincial European. So that's my impression, and that's the disease that we are dealing with. I wish we were in that situation where we had exactly the opposite problem to deal with. But I think we are decades away from that situation right now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
This will be the last round, so
Thank you, sir, for the fruitful lectures. I understood.
थोड़ा ऊंचा बोलेंगे?
Thank you, sir. Come closer. Come closer. Thank you, sir, for fruitful lectures. I am an ancient history student.
हाँ, आ गया हाँ.
My question related to ancient text. As you mentioned that in the context of the political theory, to investigate the literature of the past. So what the methodology we use for the modern value to investigate the ancient literature like Arthashastra to Kamandak Nitisar and many others. And my second question is regarding, as you mentioned, the secular socialism and many other value from Europe. But in the context of the India, Ram Rajya, used by the Orthodox, like the Karpatri Maharaj wrote a book, Ram Rajya versus Marxwad. Gandhiji also Gandhiwadi Ram Rajya, and the notion of the Ambedkarite Ram Rajya also exists. So how we generalize the concept of that Ram Rajya in these all type of idea. And one question I also, one side question. I am not a political science trained scholar, but what the parameters the political science scholar used for the dominant caste in the Indian academy, especially agro-pastoral community, and now the conditions of those communities oppose that idea. So what the parameters of the Indian academy for dominant caste? These two questions.
Thank you, Yogendra sir. I think so you are.
हाँ हाँ ऊंचा बोल दीजिए, सुन जाएगा.
इधर आ जाओ, नहीं तो आवाज आ जाएगी.
हाँ हाँ बाकियों तक भी पहुंचे ना, सिर्फ मेरे तक ही नहीं. हाँ जी जी.
वो ले लो भाई. Thank you for your wonderful kind of provocation. I think the here and now provocation is very kind of.
Please use the mic.
Okay, so
So I think that your here and now provocation offers indeed so many things to think about. But I was also thinking about the provocation could also lead to kind of certain kind of thought circuiting as well. So when we are talking about here and now, one could also think about how we are arriving at certain kind of frames. What are the kind of references which we are taking? For example, when we are jumping onto something called vernacular, or something called sub-nationalism, or some kind of layering, which kind of offers us insight, but it does not. It also ties us down to a certain kind of, again, a quagmire of sort, in which it is not very easy to emerge from. I feel that there one needs to be careful how we are arriving at the frame of reference. Another point was about your 1960s. So I was thinking about something like social movement, the ways in which the larger politics and academics around social movement is developed over time. These are the times in which all the Dalit movement, environmental movement, civil liberty movement have emerged. So how seriously does political theory, it has taken social movement in terms of framing of political theory? Because we see that
it is seen as something very non-serious, or the frames of reference will become suddenly different. So now we need to go back to some text or some folk or some other thing. So already we have a canon. So how we choose canon, again, it could be that part of the problem. So thank you.
This will be the last session of the session.
Hello, sir.
We
So
are running short of time.
are we going to the ethnic nationalism to the civic nationalism? From the ethnic nationalism to the civic nationalism? Or how can the society be connected to the constitutional measures?
Sorry, what's the second one?
Second one is, how is the basic society that is politically illiterate can be abided by the constitutional measures? Because they are following their local norms and there is nothing wrong with our constitution. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm no scholar of ancient text, and the question should be addressed to Professor Thakur. I'll just give you one example that I'm constantly thinking about these days. We have a notion of Ganatantra, and we have many Ganatantra in ancient India. As someone who, and I find the Republic of India under serious threat today. So one question that naturally comes to my mind is, were there some conceptual resources available to us at the time of the Ganatantra in ancient India? Which is not to say that there is a direct connect between them and today. But please remember, there is no direct connect between Athens and post-Enlightenment Europe. Connections are imagined, connections are created, connections are built. That's how canons get created. So I have been interested in trying to understand what was the theoretical and conceptual universe of the Indian republics. And shockingly, I find almost no literature on that. For the last 2 years, I've been struggling with this issue. There are books on those republics. But I mean, if you had a republic, surely you would have thinking about how a republic should be run. They have such detailed procedures on how to vote, when not to vote, what kind of consensus to build. But so we get to know about some institutions, we get to know about the political history. We still do not know much about the intellectual history of the Indian republics in ancient times.
Maybe they are
So,
not republic, they are cooling autocracy.
they are, similarly, the word democracy in Athens was not what we today call democracy. So that's all right. It's very important to understand that they were not republics of the kind that we are today. But whatever they were, there must have been some thinking. No? How do I recover that thought process is my question, which has interested me. I don't get enough answer, but maybe a scholar like you can find it. The idea of Ram Rajya is a very good example of an idea which has continuing cultural resonance among people. An idea that has been completely hijacked of late.
The notion of the Ambedkarite Ram Raj, Gandhiwadi Ram Raj and Orthodox Ram Raj.
मैं वो इसी पे आ रहा था. I heard you. So, how do we respond in a situation like this, where this word Ram Rajya as a condensed description of an ideal polity is being taken over by one kind of political force? The standard left liberal progressive response has been to say, oh my God, these are dangerous things, and religion is what it is, this is how we'll get into this stuff. I have often thought that there are ways of looking at it differently, and therefore Gandhi's use of Ramarajya has always sounded very interesting to me. I did not know of any Ambedkarite use of Ramarajya, so you can enlighten me later about it. I don't think to my understanding,
They use the killing of the Sambhu and other atrocities regarding the
I know.
Sudraj in Ram Rajya.
Uh,
And sir, left liberal also use Ram.
I would be.
Like Lohiya and Nambudiri Pad also use the values of the Ram Rajya and Lohiya also.
I'm not sure if Nambudiri Pad ever used Ram Rajya as a concept that he wanted to uphold. If he did, I would be very interested. If he did, I would be very interested in reading Nambudiri Pad, because to my mind that's a very exciting thing to do. Because while in Europe, while in Europe, the socialist tradition could build on the cultural heritage of Christianity, while in Latin America, the left could build on religion. In India, the left has very seriously suffered from its inability to connect to the language of religion. And the response has been just this: oh my God, this is conservative, this is repressive, this is bad, how can we deal with it, etc. To my mind, this has been one of the biggest failures of the Indian left. So if I were to discover leftists who have used Ram Rajya, if I were to discover Ambedkarites, I would be very happy. Please guide me, I will read about them. Yeah. On the dominant caste, the very use of the word dominant caste comes from a sociological theory, which uses it for those caste and communities which are not high in the Varna hierarchy, but which have economic and political power. Jats, Okalikas, and similar communities. If that is what you have in mind, then there already is a theory. But if what you have in mind are agro-pastoral communities, which are very, very different, and most of them are not dominant caste, those agro-pastoral communities and their self-understanding is something which we really need to pay attention to. So honestly, I would want a political theorist who walks with these what is that community called in Gujarat? No, not Patidars. The one who shepherds, is sort of who walk with cattle for thousands of kilometers. So for me, a political theorist is someone who walks with them for 1,000 kilometers and tries to understand their notion of desha, of boundary, of time, and such like. That would be the kind of political theory I would wish to see, but I don't get to see. I'm glad I managed to provoke you. I hope to provoke you more than I have already managed by asking you to think about, when you say vernacular ties us to quagmire, which word? I heard one political theorist say a few weeks ago, Telugu is a casteist language. It sounds similar to me. Vernacular ties you to quagmire. Now, so English doesn't tie you to anything. Is English the only liberating language left in the world? Think about it. What are we saying? I'm astonished when I hear these things, because this is exactly to my mind, if I were to look at examples of what cognitive damage of colonialism on the Indian psyche, this sounds to me like an example of that. So Hindi is parochial, Tamil is parochial, Punjabi is parochial, and English is liberating. English is a universal language. I'm happy that we are talking about these things, rather, because otherwise, and I'm so happy that we are stating it, because it enables us to talk about it. You may have said it, but I'm sure 20 other people may have this in the back of their mind. Once I spoke to a very famous academic of India. This was over dinner, and that academic, I said, what do I write? I said, I write I also write in Hindi. Then that academic told me, aha, that's for education. I said, no, I actually like to write in Hindi. And that very famous academic said to me, how can you write about theoretical subjects in a language like Hindi? I assume that it is because that famous academic was not from Hindi-speaking region. So I said Tamil. Then that academic corrected me, how can you write about these deep things in Tamil and Hindi? I said, what, can you write about this in French? They said, yes, French you can write. So French is liberating, English is liberating, Italian is universal, Hindi, Bengali and Kannada are parochial. Just examine this proposition. That's quagmire. Dal. Quagmire क्या होता है? दल में फंस जाएंगे. English takes you to clouds. Hindi takes you to quagmire. Is that what we seriously believe in? Soft nationalism. Sorry? Subnational. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Yeah, what is called subnationalism, or regionalism in India, if you ask me, it's been my considered opinion that regionalism has saved India. That if we did not have Tamil, they don't even call it subnationalism, they call it Tamil nationalism. If we did not have a Telugu Desham-like party, if we did not have subnationalism of this kind, India may have disintegrated. So you see, the problem really is, and I really want to urge you, and I'm so happy we are speaking openly about these things. You see, we have borrowed our theoretical apparatus, our images, from a tiny island mistakenly called the Great Britain. Now, in that tiny island, there is a little county. We have started thinking of Tamil Nadu like the county of Great Britain. It is not. Tamil Nadu is bigger than Great Britain. So when we think about India, we should not, the parallel that we should have in mind is not either Britain or France or Germany. The minimum scale that we should think of is Europe as a whole. So India as a political unit is almost like the European Union. And in European Union, would you say, oh my God, there is a German party. These French, they want a separate party for themselves. You would say, of course, that's how European Union runs. No? This is exactly how India runs. And the idea that there is something defective, the idea that there is there is a malady, there is a problem in subnationalism, is an idea that we have borrowed completely from a different cultural context. There is a problem if we did not have subnationalism. You see, the real problem is that the language that we have learned to speak, and the moment we transit from our local languages into the world of English, and the moment we start speaking this English lingo, we immediately enter into this imagined universe of universalism. Anything local is parochial, anything large is universal. We enter into that universe where so many assumptions are made. Most of those assumptions are nothing but the intellectual legacy of colonial heritage. So we really need, and unfortunately, it is not just the conservatives of India. Unfortunately, the leftists of India, the radicals of India, were intellectually conservative in exactly the same way. So you can be politically radical and intellectually conservative. And so much of that happened on the issue of culture and language. On the social movement, I quite agree with you that, and thanks for that, because I think a whole canon is waiting to be discovered. Canon is not merely in high text of great thinkers. Canons also lie in those who were never able to write books. But there is deep thinking underlying that. So that is one more canon waiting to be discovered, waiting to be theorized, waiting to be talked about. So I completely agree with you on that one of the social movements. Although political theory has paid some attention to social movements, but only those social movements that they approve of. They have not sufficiently paid attention to the entire range of social movements, many of which are caste-based and therefore looked down upon. But these are very powerful movements with deep thoughts. From ethnic nationalism to civic nationalism,
Are we going to this?
Are we going from civic to ethnic? It is to say, in India, are we going so, or am I recommending that?
No, in India.
In India. Yes, these two words I would probably not use in that sense, but I agree with the basic thing. I think there has been a serious decline in our nationalist imagination. Our nationalism, which was a very positive, not just civic nationalism. I mean, I think the anti-colonial nationalism has a different quality to it. We have inherited a very positive strand of nationalism. My nationalism never taught me to hate China or Pakistan. Just look at India in the first half of the 20th century. There was no Pakistan then, but there was China. Did my nationalism ever teach me to hate China? No. My nationalism gave me the strength that one of the first things the government of India did was to actually plead for China's place in the UN. My nationalism brought me closer to Latin America. My nationalism took me to Bandung, whose 70 years we are celebrating today, actually. So, Indian national, you see, the whole problem is that we have vicariously taken on the guilt of European nationalism. German nationalism. So in a sense, unfortunately, our legacy is that of very positive, vibrant, outward-looking nationalism. European nationalism is the name for a very narrow creed, racist, narrow, and so on. Ideally, these should have two different names. The word nationalism should not be used for both of them. If we do that, then our problem will be solved. The problem is we have started feeling guilty about being nationalists the way Germans feels guilty about Hitler's legacy. Why should we do that? And the trouble, and because Indian progressive left liberals started feeling so awkward and guilty about their nationalism, they ceded the ground of nationalism to those who have made zero contribution to Indian nationalism. What is BJP RSS claim to being nationalist? Not one drop of blood they have contributed to this country's freedom. Not one person went to prison. They have zero connect to the nationalism of this country, and today they are the takedars of nationalism. Who is responsible? We are responsible for that. So that's a degeneration of Indian nationalism, and the way to recover that is not to move away from nationalism, but to reclaim that nationalism. You see, so in whatever I'm saying, because my thought is very different from the dominant thought of many of my friends. I think when it comes to religion, when it comes to culture, language, nationalism, our previous response of moving away from these things because they are parochial, quagmire, narrow creeds, was completely mistaken. I think the way forward is to go into this, like Latin American liberation theology did. They got inside that. We have to get inside that. And our cultural politics has been all wrong. And no wonder we have ended up in a situation where the people, and that connects to the last question, how do we bring people back to constitutional values? By taking their culture seriously. The problem is that while we have, we are for the people, all of us are Democrats. We love people as long as they don't have a mind of their own. So when they have a mind of their own, we have problems with people. I think the point is to take their ideas seriously. Someone who believes that, someone told me some 30 years ago when Babri Masjids were demolished, I was very depressed that day, almost to the point of crying. And I was discussing it in my locality where I used to live. And these are people who were class 4 employees and Tangawala and so on. One of them said to me, Professor Saab, I was professor in the university those days, so Professor Saab, Ram ji ka mandir yahan nahi banega to England mein banega kya? I could quarrel with him, I wanted to punch him, I wanted to say, I was teaching constitution, Supreme Court, this, that and the other. But I thought hard about it. What exactly was he saying? So, and do I have a vocabulary to speak to him? Currently we do not have a language to speak to them. He's not a nasty person. He's a kind and caring person. I do not have a language to speak to him to say कि राम जी का मंदिर बनाने के लिए किसी का मस्जिद ढाने की जरूरत नहीं है. How do I speak to him about this? So that to me, in a sense, is the challenge that we have. So the left, liberal, progressive, modern Indians have only two choices. Either to elect a new people or to embrace the people we have. I think we should do the latter. Thank you.